Joining us today are Brett Loney, Environmental Manager and Senior Site Executive at Chalco, Australia, and Claire Gronow, Principal Environmental Scientist at GHD, who will be speaking at IIR's EIS for Resources Projects 2010, taking place on the 24th to 25th of August 2010 in Brisbane. Hello to you both, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, James.
Good morning.
First of all, can you explain the theory behind a strategic environmental assessment in Queensland, including the benefits for stakeholders?
We don't actually do strategic environmental assessment in Queensland at the moment, so I suppose it's just a thing that Brett and I have thought about a lot that would be of benefit. But the theory behind strategic environmental assessment is that it's a bigger picture tool than impact assessment, so it's more around policies and programs and planning level activities rather than an environmental impact assessment, which is very much about the project level. And so the theory behind strategic environmental assessment is that you can make higher level decisions that then subsequently lead you to better environmental outcomes on the project level because you've given an umbrella or direction overall to where projects and infrastructure should occur.
Yeah, James, I think the other aspect of it is that we're seeing a lot of similar projects focused in particular geographic locations, and those projects have a lot of interactive effects as a result of all of them being put into place over a short to medium term. And strategic environmental assessment is a tool that's been used outside of Australia, particularly by the funding banks like the World Bank and the development banks in third world countries for embracing these sorts of effects in those sorts of environments. And we're suggesting that that sort of assessment has application in Queensland, particularly, and not just Queensland, in other parts of Australia as well, particularly where you have the level of development and the pace of development that you currently have going on.
Can you run me through the paper you've produced and its aim in facilitating the integration of environmental elements into strategic decision-making at all stages?
Look, I think the paper really focuses on what strategic environmental assessment is and how it differs from environmental impact assessment. And then it describes the sorts of things that you would consider at a strategic level as against at a project level, and it talks about the benefits of that from a stakeholder point of view when somebody's developing a project, what it means to them, and also what it means to the broader community from the point of view of addressing issues that arise in communities as a result of projects or numbers of projects developing. And we use that background to then illustrate with a couple of case studies type examples at the end of the paper.
Mm. And also there are a bunch of things that an environmental impact assessment really can't handle very well. It doesn't handle cumulative impacts particularly well because it's project focused, and it's hard to pick up then on impacts of nearby developments. It also doesn't necessarily handle the sort of overall alternatives and justifications for certain developments that well. So when you do environmental impact assessments, those sections are often quite weak and wishy-washy. And something that we want to show through our paper is that by applying a strategic environmental assessment first, you would actually then be able to shore up those sorts of things, and at the impact assessment level, at the project level, you wouldn't need to worry so much about those things because your overall decision making about directing where development should occur and what sorts of development should occur has already been made.
And how do you believe that the outcomes of your paper can be translated into real-life business scenarios?
I don't think it's all that difficult. There's very well-established methodologies being used around the world for strategic environmental assessment. It is being used to some extent through the federal government Environmental Protection Biodiversity Conservation Act in a fairly narrow focus. And in some of our planning projects, some strategic environmental assessment also comes in. So I think we've already got some of the frameworks. There's certainly a strong awareness of it amongst practitioners, and I think a fair bit of enthusiasm for it as well amongst impact assessment practitioners who can see some of the issues arising. because of lack of strategic environmental assessment. So I don't think it would be too difficult to move into a more formal application of this approach at a state government level. What do you think, Brett?
Yeah, I think, James, it has some application to a degree in Australia at the moment, but it hasn't been applied fully and hasn't been actually identified as a tool for assessment. And my view is that there is a lot of real life business scenarios out there today, and that's what our case studies will focus on. That can, that this applies to here and now, and some of the discussions you see on the media about multiple projects having effect on communities at the moment, and there has been a number in recent weeks. Those effects could have been addressed by strategic environmental assessment, and that's what we're trying to say is that there is a tool out there. This shouldn't be happening, and there is a tool out there to address it.
You're both speaking at IIR's EIS for Resources Projects Conference 2010, which takes place on the 24th to 25th of August in Brisbane. What will be the focus of your presentations?
I think the focus of the presentation is that as far as environmental impact assessment and preparation of environmental impact statements and use of environmental impact statements in resource projects is concerned, is that there needs to be another tool that is used in the process, because the EISs that are being produced are really not meeting the objectives of what an EIS should be achieving, particularly as regards providing information to the public.
So I think we should be able to show that EISs themselves can become more effective and more targeted, but also that overall, some of the issues that are turning up at the back end of project assessments can actually be avoided and much better managed if dealt with at the front end, if you like. So I suppose an outcome will be how you can actually strengthen the environmental assessment process throughout the project cycle. And there's a definite link with that to sustainability generally, to delivering sustainability on projects.
And finally, how do you hope that delegates will benefit from your presentations?
I hope that the delegates who are seeing a level of frustration with what they're doing, particularly delegates who come from the client side rather than the consulting side, see that there is a tool there that they can actually use even within their own organisations, which may help them address some of the issues that they're having when it comes to getting approvals through the EIS process.
And I think we'll find generally that practitioners, particularly in the consulting sphere, are very aware of the sorts of issues that Brett and I will be talking about, and will definitely be fairly will concur with what we're saying. And so hopefully it's a bit of a challenge to environmental practitioners to now get some momentum and carry some of this forward and make it actually happen.
Brett Loney and Claire Gronow, many thanks for your time today.
Thank you.
Thanks, James.